Scott Gulbransen of Silver and Black today as we talk a little 49ers-Raiders. They're going to face each other on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium, but they've been going at it for the last 2 days in these joint practices. Scott, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing today? James, Casey, good to see you. Good to speak to you as we get closer to football, man. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, man.
That hat is James Ham approved right there.
James Ham is like the fedora king.
It's Friday.
He's
Friday.
Yeah. So if James says it's good, it's good. I need to give me a fedora too.
I don't know that I can't pull the popped front bill, but I certainly can wear a fedora.
James,
we can go old school like that too. You know, we can move
yes,
it around.
That's what I like. When I do the fedora, I usually I can't flip it. Yeah, but I also don't do flat bills. So yeah,
I get it, man. It's everybody's got their own style, and as we age, it tends to go out of style. But hey, you got to keep young, right? You got to always know what's going on.
Absolutely. And Scott, what's going on with these joint practices, man? I heard it was pretty even on Thursday. I kind of hear from everything I read, I hear the Raiders went to work on the Niners today.
They went to work on the Niners today. It sounds like, especially defensively, but also Devontae Adams was knocked out of practice by the 49ers with a leg injury. Josh McDaniels at his press conference said just a while ago that it wasn't serious. So that's a bullet dodged for the Raiders. But yeah, it looks like the Raiders defense. Now, you go back a week and a half ago, a lot of Raider fans and folks that cover the team were saying Jimmy Garoppolo looks terrible. He's throwing all these interceptions. To which my co-host Mo Moten said, hey, maybe the defense is just doing well. Well, we've seen the defense do well against San Francisco, who we see Brock Purdy, we see Sam Darnold throwing interceptions along with Trey Lance. So it goes to show, it's camp, of course. You can't read too much into that. But certainly a team that has been as poor as it has been on defense in Vegas/Oakland, it's good to see them having a good camping, having a good kind of run here, at least early against 49ers in their first live action.
Yeah.
Scott, we see this build up to preseason games that where they're doing the joint practices. And I think it builds a little more excitement into the actual preseason game, because preseason games are they're horrible. They're horrible to watch. And I won't even watch them. I don't want them swaying my fantasy football knowledge. You're like, oh, this guy's amazing. No, he's horrible. He's never going to play at all. He'll never see us now. But I guess my question is, we see the Adams hit today. Does that ramp this thing up for the game? Are we going to see a more physical, get back at you type preseason game because we're seeing these, 3 or 4 day joint practice things?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've seen the last couple years, right, James, that these fights that break out during these practices, the Rams had a big one last year as well. So I think you look at that and yeah, guys get chippy. They start getting out there and getting at it. But I think it does start to lean into the idea that, man, these guys are going to do a little more. Of course, you got players out there who are fighting for a job, right? So these preseason games, they're not exciting for us to watch other than the technical stuff we're looking for. But these guys, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the team. I also think you look at the comments of Sean Payton this week saying, hey, he might start some starters up in Denver, which moved the line, by the way, 2 whole points after he said it. It goes to show you, I think the feeling, and about the NFL, it's sort of groupthink and it switches around a lot. And I think some coaches are now playing with the idea that despite the idea that there could be injuries or the risk of injury to a key player, and you don't want to do that, of course, that maybe, just maybe, these guys need to get ready for the start of the season. And let's face it, covering the Raiders on the AFC side, the AFC is so stacked that if you get off to a bad start 3 or 4 games in the season, you might not recover. So maybe that's playing a little in their head. And so maybe this preseason will be a little bit different. We'll start to see a shift there in the mindset around it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, obviously you're looking from the Raiders perspective, but today was the Brock Purdy show from what I can see. He took most of the snaps. He was 17 from 26, which limited us being able to get a better glimpse of Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. So who do you think, I mean, obviously we won't see Brock Purdy in this preseason game, but who do you think we'll see more of out of between the two, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold?
Boy, it's a good question. I mean, you have the situation where you kind of know what you have with Darnold, right? He's been in the league several years. And then you have Trey Lance, who they're still waiting to kind of emerge. And obviously the draft capital, everything they did to draft Trey Lance. So I would imagine you'll see more Trey Lance, right? Because they got to see where he's at, how far he's developed, and what he's able to do. And so if I'm betting on it, I would say that that's what we'll see. We'll see some Sam Darnold in the first half, but then why not go to the young guy, let him get as much action as he can, so you can not only evaluate it, but he can also get as much experience as he can. Good question.
Yeah. Jimmy Garoppolo, that's my guy. That's my guy, Jimmy G, man. I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for, but this is one of the first times in some form of live action that he's gotten a chance to play with the Raiders and play with their weapons, and when McDaniel's out there, they're reunited. How's Jimmy look these 2 days?
He's looked really good. All the reports that you see, and of course they're doing the old NFL shuffle where the team and the practice is in the far corner of the facility, away from the media, so you kind of have to peer in there through a lens to try to see what's going on. But you look at what he's been able to do, come out, been very steady. And thrown some nice balls to his wide receivers. He's been connecting well with Jacoby Myers, of course, who they brought over from the Patriots as a free agent this year in that slot receiver position. Hunter Renfrow coming back from injury last year as well. And then you look at what happened yesterday with the press conferences. I mean, the 49ers, look, there's being cordial, there's being nice. When somebody leaves your team, hey, wish you the best. There's no sense in talking negative about him. But Kyle Shanahan was oozing about how much Jimmy Garoppolo meant, and he made some comparisons which you could agree with or maybe not agree with, about being the most talented quarterback they've had since Steve Young. Really? That surprised everybody. But then you look at the Raiders roster too. All of the Raider guys are talking about Jimmy in the locker room and what he means from a leadership perspective, which is not news to you guys covering the 49ers too, because that's what he was known for. Now, he couldn't stay on the field. That's a different story. But overall, nobody's had anything but good things to say about him. And then he's come out after last week kind of struggling a little bit in practice. He's been sharp so far, and all of it looks like he's ready to go and staying healthy.
We do have the Adams injury. I mean, are they going to bubble wrap some of their stars from here on out because of a situation like this? And, we talked about it earlier in the week, but do you have anything new on Josh Jacobs, or is this thing just going to run out as long as it can?
Yeah, I think number one on the Adams leg injury. Yeah, I don't know how much you'll see him, if at all. I doubt you'll see him at all, especially now with what happened. But we'll see what coaches are very vague about injuries clearly until they get a better sense of what's going on. They said it wasn't serious, but yeah, you kind of have to shut the guy down, I would imagine. Now with Josh Jacobs, yeah, I don't anticipate. We've said all along on our show, James, that he'll come in for week 1. Until then, nothing's going to happen. They did sign today veteran running back Damian Williams, of course, who won the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. He had that 104-yard performance in that Super Bowl over the 49ers, which I know people up there will remember. And
John Scott, we didn't have to bring that up. We knew where he's coming from. We knew that, Scott.
One of Kenny's many should have been championships for the San Francisco 49ers.
Gave that one away.
Yeah.
Probably 6 or 7 at that point. Come on now.
Yeah. So obviously there's no movement there. There's no sign that he's going to come back in. But I said this week, and you guys can tell me if you agree, sometimes when veterans hold out of camp for whatever reason, in this case, he just hasn't signed his tender. You get through a preseason game. If the young running back Zamir White goes out there and lights it up and looks really good, that might be a little motivation for Josh Jacobs to say, hey guys, can we work on a Saquon Barkley kind of deal here? Give me a little more money up front and I'll come into camp now. So we'll see what happens with that. But either way, I think they're going to have to go as though he's not going to return, which makes the Raiders less talented because he's just a great player. All of the business stuff aside and the value of running backs aside. So the faster they can get him there, the better. But I wouldn't imagine, even though he played last year in the preseason, which was a little bit crazy, I wouldn't anticipate that he'd be seeing much action outside of some practice here and there if he were in camp right now.
Off the top, this is kind of random, but didn't Damian Williams sit out the COVID year?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that's what happened. So because he had that great performance in the Super Bowl, and they talked about it was random. It doesn't mean anything. I was just like, no, I forgot. I think he did sit out that COVID.
Good short yardage back. Yeah. Nice touch.
He was good. He had a hell of a Super Bowl too, like you talked about. He's a good ball player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most yards he's had on in a season is about 500. So he's not, like you said, James, not a big yardage guy, despite the Super Bowl performance. But you need a veteran body in there. You got some young kids in there, and they want somebody to come in, I think, and just be able to be a camp body and see what happens. They like Damian Williams, from what Josh McDaniel said. They liked him before the Josh Jacobs stuff. So they had been talking to him for quite a while and waited until now to bring him in. So we'll see if that helps their running back stable at all.
You got it, Kelly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want to reemphasize because I saw some people asking. So Devontae Adams, they're saying this injury is minor, and it doesn't sound like there's much other information beyond that. But I'm kind of curious about the energy around it, because obviously it sounds like it was an unintentional hit from Charvarius Ward. But I saw a beat reporter tweet that they were surprised that more Raiders didn't get kind of riled up after it in response. Like if it were a different player or something like that, they felt like maybe they would have seen more energy surrounding that hit. Does that concern you, or is that something that you kind of noticed and thought about?
No, I mean, I get that sometimes, and it goes back to the idea of do these guys start getting chippy, and was it a hit that they thought wasn't clean or whatnot? But at the end of the day, they're focused on doing what they got to do, which is a good sign, right? Not getting distracted. But no, I haven't heard any of that energy. I know that they had agreed, I guess the two coaches had agreed that if any punches were thrown, they would take guys off the field, and that would be the end of the day. So there was kind of a no tolerance policy to this kind of stuff. But a hit like that, it's football. I mean, you might get a helmet in the thigh, in the shin, wherever it may be. And look, that hurts. I don't care how tough and how great of an athlete you are, like Devontae Adams is clearly. It's just a situation where stuff like that happens. It's a tough game. You got to be tough to play it. And I think some of these guys do it. And you know what, as reporters or journalists and people who watch the practices, sometimes we might think, oh, geez, why didn't they get more upset about it? But I don't necessarily put any stock into that. I just don't think that it's something that really coalesced around the team and said, hey, listen, this was something we got to avenge or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. Now, if it's more serious, maybe people take umbrage with it, but I haven't heard any reports from anybody or talked to anybody who thought that the hit was not a clean and good hit.
Scott Gulbransen, silver and black today. I'll get you out of here on this. This is just something that I wondered since I found all this out. 49ers, Las Vegas Raiders, training camp, everything in Henderson, Nevada. And it was just like a trip to me that they were outside. And I'm like, training camp outside the whole time? And I was like, that's crazy. I have no idea why they would do that in Las Vegas. I don't know why they wouldn't just stay at Napa, but they want to be in Vegas. And then I found out this week they have an indoor facility.
Yes.
And they're still practicing outside in Henderson, Nevada. Why aren't they using the indoor facility for training camp and for these joint practices?
Well, they do, but I think with the joint practices, you have much more room. So if you go to those joint practices, you'll see there'll be multiple units working at the same time sometimes, and so you'll have your first and second offense going and first and second defense going. So they'll be playing multiple fields. The indoor facility in Las Vegas has a full 1.5 full fields inside of it, so they can do a lot in there. But remember, hey, look, you go up to Napa in the summertime during Camp 2. The heat index was over 100 there. Now, I know it's 110 in Vegas, and it's a drier heat. I get that. But nonetheless, I think that they do kind of a mix of that and get guys out there and keep them really hydrated. But once you live there too, as all the Raiders do, clearly, you start to acclimate a little bit to it. And so if you're out there early, they do early morning practices, when it's only 92 or so. And then the guys get used to it. And so it's real interesting. But yeah, the first time they opened the facility was during the COVID year, and we were going in every day and having to get tested and all that stuff. And I remember going outside and they're like, we're starting outside today. I'm like, why? I don't want to stand out here. So I get it, man. But they do use the indoor facility when they're just practicing as the Raiders a lot.
Scott Gulbransen, silver and black today. My main man downtown, Scott, man. It was a pleasure talking to you a couple of times this week, and we're going to talk throughout the season for sure, man. I look forward to it.
Look forward to it, guys. Have a great weekend up there, and we'll talk to you next.